Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Caregiver Crosswalk, Dementia Care Consulting. Never roam alone.
Brantt Myhres' book, it's called Painkiller, was just released, and Corey, I couldn't put it down. Brantt played for 7 NHL teams, and his role throughout his career was a team's enforcer. Brantt doesn't hold back in the book, and he really calls it like it is. He was given multiple chances in the NHL with several rehab stints, but through the ups and downs of drug and alcohol addiction, Brantt ended up being the only NHL player to be banned for life from the NHL. His addictions were simply too powerful. By the time his daughter was born in 2008, he was penniless, sleeping on a friend's couch, and he had just been released from police custody. He showed up for league-mandated rehab for the 5th and last time, and he hasn't looked back. Picked himself up, addressed his issues, and turned his life around, and we're very proud to have Brantt Myhres on the line. Brantt, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Welcome to the jungle.
That's right. And a jungle indeed, Brantt. You know, well, first of all, thank you for coming on. Congratulations on your long road to recovery and publishing a really an outstanding book called Painkiller. And, you know, we have to go back, Brantt, for some perspective here. Go back to your early childhood, if you wouldn't mind, and because it wasn't the easiest of childhood.
No, it wasn't. I mean, that was part of the writing process that probably was the most emotional on me. That, and then later on with my parents. So I think any time as a child that you sort of turn back the clock when it comes to physical abuse when you're only, I believe, 5 or 6 years old, it's really hard to understand. And again, the therapeutic process of writing and doing the audiobook and that kind of stuff really took a toll on me. But you know, I've done a lot of therapy over the years, and like I said, with you guys mentioning, with 13 years of sobriety, I've worked on a lot of those issues.
So important and so incredible, and I've even listening to the story, it's so powerful. And here you've come so far. You worked your way up various leagues, including the Western Hockey League, and then in 1992, right here in Montreal, I understand, at the old Montreal Forum. I'm old enough to remember that. It was draft day, and you were selected 5th round by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Can you tell us about that day?
Yeah, that was an amazing moment for me. My agent flew my grandparents down, who I lived with. They raised me and my sister Cher, and my father Bob, and it was just, you know, that moment where you're in Montreal and you're down on the floor and you're seeing all the banners, and it just was a surreal moment. And I waited a while to get my name called, but it did, and I couldn't have been happier to get drafted by Tampa.
Yeah, and good old Phil Esposito, who we've had on this show, I think was there with you at the time, I believe.
Yeah. Phil was there, and his brother Tony was there, and Terry Crisp was the coach. Who during the Battle of Alberta in the 80s, he was the coach for the Flames. So I was just like a little kid in a candy
store. Must have been, of course, being an Alberta boy. We're talking to Brantt Myhres, ex-NHL enforcer, but struggles with addiction, and really an inspiring story, Brantt. And I have to say, now you got drafted, you're in the bigs, and you have some money in your pocket, and of course the drinking and drugs were increasing and really out of control, and you went to NHL-mandated rehab multiple times, ended up being the only NHL player to be banned for life, but up until then, you were given many chances, but it does go to show the power of addiction. And just, I guess, a couple of examples, as I was reading your book, I was on an emotional roller coaster, like I'm sure many readers, cheering you on, saying, come on, Brantt, you got this, and up and down. And you mention in your book that you'd find ways to fool the executives, including the urine testers. You had your own stash of clean urine that you would warm up and get past. And the unbelievable story, this one I couldn't really say, oh, wow, when you had to meet the famous Dr. Lewis, NHL doctor, for reinstatement. I think this was after rehab number 3. You had $650,000 contract on the line, and you ended up going on a bender the night before. I believe your meeting was at 9, Brantt, and you did your last line of cocaine at around 8:30, and I don't know how you did it, but you passed and you got reinstated, So this is just some of the stories, but I have to say you must have had your ups and downs, and you must have had days where it couldn't get worse. But where would you say, you really hit rock bottom and this was something had to change?
Yeah, I mean, the insanity of the disease just goes to show you with the story that you just mentioned, on me thinking it was a good idea to, get a hotel room just down the road there from the doctor, and then be doing cocaine all morning, and then meet him for the most important meeting of my life. But where I believe, for me personally, where it all changed is where I lost control one night on, I believe it was February 17th of 2008. And I share about the blackout that I've never experienced before. And I just woke up with two policemen having me handcuffed in the snow. And I did some pretty bad things that night at my sister's house that I don't recall, like 1 minute of it. And so the next morning when I got on my knees, I believe I've said a lot of sort of mini prayers before, but this one was different. And basically, I was so lost, and I just said, I need help. And I said, this time, if you could please give me the strength for the obsession to drink and do drugs to be lifted, I'll do my part. And I had a feeling come over me about 5 minutes later, and the feeling was, you're done. And this is it. And I got on a plane the next day. The league paid again for my 5th treatment, and I went away for 8 months in Astoria, Oregon.
So, Brantt, you describe it as a disease, and that's in fact what it was. My understanding at that moment, or through that moment, 2008 was your special year. On the eve of your daughter's birth, when all the money was gone and every bridge was burnt and every opportunity squandered, you were given a last chance. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's a chapter in there, probably my favorite. It's called My Last Chance. And it's an emotional chapter for me, just because a lot of personal things that meant a lot. Obviously, Chloe, my daughter, was born, I believe, 7 days after I got on my knees. And I went away to treatment, and I was really torn. I mean, I wanted to see her and be there for the birth and hold her. And I just knew that if I didn't go to treatment this time and take it seriously, that she wasn't going to have a father around. So I did. And every month was tough, and I spent 8 months in treatment, and I didn't get to see her face until she was around 8.5 months old. But looking back, I have a very special bond today.
Yeah, unbelievable bond, as you clearly show in your book, Painkiller. We're talking with Brantt Myhres here on Life Unrehearsed. Matt Delvecchio with Corey Sirota, and the book's called Painkiller, and it is a must-read, and not just if you're a sports fan. This is a life story, Brantt, and again, just congratulations to you for just putting it all out there. And you've kept up your sobriety. You had that 8 months in rehab. This was, I think, number 5 for you. You ended up going back to school and did some wonderful things, including the creation of the Greater Strides Hockey Academy, which was run out of Calgary for reserve kids. I think it was age 5 to 17. And I'm very, very proud of that. I had a smile on my face when I was reading that. And you were finding your stride. And then one day you received an email from Dean Lombardi, the general manager of the Los Angeles Kings. And Brantt, we have to head out to traffic, but when we come back, we'd love for you to tell us about that call you got from Dean Lombardi and what you ended up doing for the LA Kings.
Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Leanna Senior Transition Support, specialists in downsizing and seniors residences.
So we're sharing with you, your story is so humbling, as there's many adjectives I can use, but the one I'm going to is right now humbling. You're the author of the book Painkiller, and I think about, I'm a big quote person, and what came to my mind as I'm listening to your story is, it's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it. And you took a very challenging and difficult situation and you turned it around, and God bless bless you for that. You've kept up your sobriety. You went back to school. You've worked hard. You were finding your stride. And then you received an email from Dean Lombardi, general manager of the Los Angeles Kings. Can you tell us about that call and what you ended up doing for the LA Kings?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was sending proposals to the National Hockey League and the Players Union for, I believe, 5 or 6 years straight every year on my sobriety birthday, and nothing transpired. But I just kept sending them every year. And I just went to the gym one day. I came back and my phone was blinking. And I looked at the email and it said Dean Lombardi, and obviously my heart sort of started racing a quick bit faster, and it said, please call me. And I did, and there were some players that were having, that got into some issues that year. I flew to LA and we worked out a contract the next day, and I was just a sounding board and I guess you could almost say like a sober liaison for any of the players or management that were going through any type of struggle, really, when it came to understanding addiction, whether it was pain medication, sleeping medication, depression issues, that sort of thing. And so I worked in Los Angeles with the team for 3 years, and it was the best 3 years of my life.
Yeah, there's some wonderful stories there, and it was, it was hard for you to fit in, but you earned their trust and credibility quite quickly. That's a very inspiring part. Now, Brantt, you talk about quite a few players in your book. One of the ones you talk quite highly of was a guest on our show, was Chris Nyland, and he also had his share of addiction challenges. By the way, he's in the same studios just down the hallway from us, Brantt, here at Bell Media Studios. And but it is so powerful, as you experienced firsthand. And the pandemic, Brantt, as you're probably fully aware, has made it even tougher for many, many people. So, what words of advice can you give to those struggling with addiction?
Well, I think that in a time like I got sober in 2008, and there was, I believe Facebook just started, and there was no Instagram, and there was not really Twitter. So in today's world, with the accessibility for these, whether you're a teenager or you're an adult, to join some of these recovery groups are just outstanding. Some of them have 100,000 people in the group, and so for them to, if you are at home and you are struggling, there's, I go on recovery Zoom meetings, at least once or twice a week. I talk to somebody that's in recovery almost every day, and I've done that for 13 years. So at some point, you have to, as I did when I looked at myself in the mirror that night and I stared at what I'd become, I was tired of that person, and I had to stop pointing the finger at everybody else and turn the finger back at Brantt and start taking the necessary steps to get better.
That's NHL enforcer Brantt Myhres you're listening to with his struggles with addiction and his inspiring story of perseverance and determination to get his life back on track. I'm very curious as to who you would say made the most or had the most impact in your life.
From what time, ma'am?
Yes.
That's
you pick. I'm going to leave it open for you. Yeah.
Bob and Joe Brady, who were my grandparents, who basically took me in and raised me from a little child, and then my 13-year-old daughter Chloe after I got sober.
You in your book, you talk so highly of your grandparents and had some challenges with your own parents and your ups and downs with your dad, but it kept coming back to the grandparents that were such a wonderful, they sounded like wonderful people and a wonderful influence on your life, and obviously Chloe, your daughter as well. And, as we were wrapping up the book, I think what I found, even at the end of the book, Brantt, and we heard this, we've even had Theo Fleury on, in addition to Chris Nyland, and we've talked about addiction quite often, and it's just because you're sober doesn't mean it's over. It's taking things even at a day at a time, every day when you wake up. Do you find yourself in that same frame of mind?
Oh, absolutely. If I don't take this thing seriously, I'm getting loaded tonight. And that happened at 10 years sober, where, you know, I write about it in the book, where, you know, buying a bag of cocaine sounded like a good idea. This is coming from a guy that, you know, worked 7 years to have his dream job back, and, you know, his daughter in his life again, and rebuilding my life financially. And there I am, you know, buying cocaine again. I mean, so to me, that's the power of the disease. And as they say, it's constantly doing push-ups and getting stronger. And if I don't, you know, do things daily in my life for my recovery, then, yeah, that's exactly the truth.
So what's next for you, Brantt?
Well, what's next is probably make some clam chowder soup at around 5.
Okay. Well, you know, but I love your answer.
And then watch all the hockey games that are going on today, say a little prayer at around 11 for my sobriety, and go to bed.
Amazing. Just amazing. Brantt Myhres, we want to thank you very much for sharing your incredible story, and we want to congratulate you on your sobriety and wish you continued strength. And thank you for taking some time here live on a Saturday.
Absolutely, you guys. It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for you know, spreading some hope on a Saturday for those people out there that are struggling.
All right, thank you, Brantt. This is Brantt Myhres. You have to go out and get his book called Painkiller, just released. It is an excellent read. All right, Corey, what do we have going on next week?
Well, in an effort to support the restaurant industry, which we know is struggling, 3 guys and 1 gal created a Facebook page. Little did they know they had created a movement with unbelievable initiatives and even newer ways to help the community. So now 10,000 strong. You're going to hear about that story, that program next week on Life Unrehearsed.
Yeah, wonderful story. And after almost a year into the pandemic, you know, mental health is not going away. Some are arguing it's even worse than ever. And we're going to hear from a clinical social worker and therapist to get our words of advice as we head down the stretch in this seemingly never-ending battle to keep it all together. So that's next Saturday. You can hear us every Saturday at 3 p.m. on CJD 800.
Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Leanna Senior Transition Support, specialists in downsizing and seniors residences.